Chapter 7 comes right after chapter 6. I was in Phoenix, Arizona before coming here, and it was 95 degrees. Now it's 47. Little change. And while in Phoenix, we discussed chapter 6. Chapter 6 is the first demon that Krishna killed was Putana. And there's so much written about that pastime by our acharyas and from other Puranas that it had 4 parts. 4 parts. And now this is chapter 7. So Krishna is a little bit older, but he's still a little baby, because the pastime with Putana when he was just 3 months, he's not terribly older, but a little bit older, maybe 2 or 3 months, doesn't say specifically how many months. And in this chapter, there's 2 demons that Krishna kills as a little baby. This is one of them, Sakatasura, and then Trinavarta. There's a nice text, the Krishna Ashtatara Satanama, 108 names of Krishna. So there's a mantra, Om Shakatasura Bhajanaya Namaha. He breaks the cart. And the chapter begins. When Mother Yasoda's baby was slanting his body to attempt to rise and turn around, this attempt was observed by a Vedic ceremony. So there's ceremonies for everything. That's one of them. And commentary, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur writes a commentary on this verse, or this chapter. The 7th chapter shows the Aishvarya, or display of power, aspect of Krishna's childhood pastimes. After bathing and sleeping, he broke the cart. He killed Trinavarta and showed his mother the universe. Previous chapter. By chewing Putana's breast, he showed the power of his lips. In the cart pastime, he showed the power of his feet. In killing Trinavarta, he showed the power of his hands. In revealing the universe twice, and this and the next chapter, to his mother, he showed all his powers. So Aishvarya is being displayed by a little child. Though hearing any of the topics of the Lord gradually rids one of indifference to hearing about the Lord and makes it possible to attain prema, hearing the pastimes of Krishna's childhood quickly brings about this prema. So get ready for prema to become ushered into your life. Jiva Goswami comments, hearing about Krishna vanquishes both disinclination to hear about him and one's material desires. The heart becomes purified. When the heart becomes pure, because of destruction of impure impressions, it becomes capable of comprehending rasa. This purification happens quickly by hearing all the pastimes of Krishna, but more slowly in the case of hearing the pastimes of the avatars. There's special, in other words, there's special appreciation of Krishna's childhood pastimes. Krishna's pastimes in a general sense, and Krishna's childhood pastimes in a very specific sense. There's a sweetness, a madhurya feature of the childhood pastimes that are unparalleled, even in other forms of the Lord. Ananda Vrindavan Champu expresses, at the age of 3 months, Krishna rolled over and crawled. So it does place the timing. 3 months was when the Putana Lila took place. Now he's not much older. To commemorate this event, Yashoda observed a special ceremony. In such a ceremony called Uttana, which is performed when a child is due to leave the house for the first time, the child is properly bathed. This is a standard illustration of how a child is bathed in Vedic culture. The mother holds the child resting on her feet over a basin. And then another lady comes and pours water while the mother rubs the child with her hand and cleanses the body of the child with her hand. And notice that other child that's over there on the left, that's Balaram. So Krishna and Balaram. Although Balaram looks a little smaller than Krishna. I don't know why. Now this is a classic painting from the birth ceremony, and he's got a bunch of hair on his head in a birth ceremony. That's a little unusual. Just after Krishna turned 3 months old, Mother Yashoda celebrated this ceremony with the other women of the neighborhood. So they have musical instruments and so forth, but they also invited the Brahmanas. As the Brahmanas joined by chanting Vedic hymns, and professional musicians also took part, this great ceremony was observed by Mother Yashoda. So it's seated, she's getting the attention, but there's Nanda Maharaj next to her. But she gets special, she's Mother Yashoda, after all. After completing the bathing ceremony for the child, Mother Yashoda received the Brahmanas by worshipping them with proper respect and giving them ample food grains and other eatables, clothing, desirable cows, and garlands, because this is their wealth. They have grains, they have cows, they have some clothing and flower garlands. When the Brahmanas finished and Mother Yashoda saw that the child felt sleepy, she lay down on the bed with the child and until he was peacefully asleep. Because remember, this is the cart demon story, so she's putting him to rest. Here that shows she's putting him in a nice crib that's got a rocker on it, and he looks sound asleep. As the Brahmanas joined in chanting Vedic hymns, and professional musicians also took part, this great ceremony was observed by, though that's the Chinese. I don't know how that got in there. Both Jiva Goswami and Sanatan Goswami comment similarly. Yashoda was attached to the ceremony out of affection, since Krishna was her only son. Yashoda did this rather than Nanda, who had arranged the birth ceremony. There's the explanation why so much attention is going to her. And there's the crib again. The liberal mother Yashoda, absorbed in celebrating the Uttana ceremony, was busy, and thus she could not hear the child crying for his mother. At that time, the child Krishna, demanding to drink the milk of his mother's breast, angrily threw his legs upward. At this time, Krishna decided to kill Sakatasura, a demon who was hiding in the cart under which he lay. That's Ananda Vrindavan Champu. Opening his joyful eyes, Krishna simultaneously destroyed the cart and killed the demon by playfully kicking his feet. Without any effort, Krishna vanquished that demon with his tender feet, which were unlimitedly beautiful and softer than the petals of a lotus flower. These were not the thunderbolt nails he used to kill Hiranyakashipu, nor were they the legs he extended throughout the universe in his Vamana incarnation. The gentle tinkling of Krishna's ankle bells increased the splendor of his delicate little legs. Lord Sri Krishna was lying down underneath the handcart in one corner of the courtyard. And although his little legs were as soft as leaves, when he struck the cart with his legs, it turned over violently and collapsed. So this is now getting right down to the demon being killed. There's Krishna under the cart. As you see, one of the wheels fell off the cart. And the cart was just loaded with paraphernalia, household paraphernalia. They didn't have storage cubes or, things like that. They just put stuff in a cart. And you see the demon's face there in the car, somewhere in the cart. He's getting crushed by the cart itself. There we go. And in the lower left corner, of course, that's Balaram. He looks a little startled, but he's omniscient, so he knows what Krishna's doing. And there's the demon getting crushed by the cart. So the painting shows there's pots and brass pots and for cooking and this thing and thatting, household paraphernalia. The wheels separated from the axle. The hubs and spokes fell apart, and the pole of the hand cart broke. The pole is the instrument for turning the wheel this way, that way, for guiding it. On the cart, there were many utensils made of various metals, and all of them scattered hither and thither. Another nice painting showing Sakatasura being crushed by the cart. And Krishna's nothing happens to him, of course. When Mother Yashoda and all the men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, saw the wonderful situation, they began to wonder how the handcart had collapsed by itself. Well, it didn't, because the boys are going to say, he did it. And the parents are going to say, no, come on. It's a big cart. He's a little baby. Although the handcart was higher than the child could easily touch the wheel of the cart, and this was sufficient to send the demon down to the earth. The Lord simultaneously pushed the demon to the earth and superficially broke the handcart. Now, this is from Vaishnava Toshini. Vaishnava Toshini is Sanatana Goswami's commentary on the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. There are these different illustrations. There's the cart collapsing. There's the mother Yashoda picking up the child. And the poor demon got crushed. Here he is again. The handcart was actually another form of the Sakatasura, a demon who had come there to kill the child. Now, this is described elsewhere, but starting with Putana, and then Sakatasura, and then Trinavarta, these were all assistants in Kamsa's camp. According to Brahma Vaivarta Purana, Putana was the younger sister of Kamsa. And she had mystic powers, and she had benedictions from Durvasa Muni, and she had shape-changing abilities, and she could fly in the sky like a witch, and she had, she was an interesting lady. When that failed, then next was, because these names are listed in different places, Sakatasura was specifically also sent by Kamsa. Because remember, and when the 8th child of Devaki, he thought was the female child, and he tried to kill the female child, and she flew out of his hands up into the sky and laughed at him. Kamsa, you're such a fool. The 8th child of Devaki has already been born elsewhere and will kill you. And she disappeared. So he didn't know where. So part of Putana's mission was to find out where, and then the other part was to kill him. And when she was killed instead, so at least he knew where the 8th child of Devaki was. So he could have tried to kill him himself, but he sent Sakatasura, who had some other mystic abilities. He could hide himself in the cart, or here it specifically says the cart was another form of the demon who had come there to kill the child. On the plea of crying, one unable to suck his mother's breast, Krishna took this opportunity to kill the demon. Thus he kicked Sakatasura just to expose him. Interesting. The cart was the demon was the cart. To expose him, he kicked the cart. But he kicked the wheel of the cart. Having no gross material body other than air, the ghost-like Sakatasura had taken shelter of the handcart and was looking for the opportunity to do mischief to Krishna. When Krishna kicked the cart with his small and very delicate legs, Sakatasura was immediately pushed down to the earth and his shelter dismantled. So this is a different explanation from a different commentary indicating he was hiding in the cart. In any case, the demon sent by Kamsa had tried to make the cart fall on Krishna's head. Instead, the infant Krishna kicked the cart with the red sole of his foot. When the cart broke into pieces, the demon fell, leaving his body of air. He attained a pure spiritual body. And after respectfully bowing down before Lord Hari, this is Garga Samhita, in a chariot pulled by 100 horses, he went to the Lord's own abode of Goloka. Shoo! Is that mercy, or is that mercy, or is that mercy? Which one? At that time, the small children present asserted that the cart had been kicked apart by baby Krishna. And the parents were saying, no, come on. The assembly of Gopas and Gopis, unaware that Krishna was always unlimited, could not believe that baby Krishna had such inconceivable power. They could not believe the statements of the children, and therefore they neglected these statements as being childish talk. Fearing some evil spirits, Mother Yashoda picked up the crying child. So you may remember from the Damodar Leela, from the Putana Leela, that whole procedure. It wasn't just mantras, the switch of a cow's tail, and then bathing Krishna in cow urine, and then smearing cow dung on different parts of his body. There's a procedure called nyasa. It's used in deity worship, deity installations. Mantras are said touching a certain part of the body, and then that marma, or that place on the body of the deity, is also touched, and the same mantra is spoken, awakening the life air within the deity. So that's the procedure they used. On the marma, or the points of the body, is described in Ayurveda also, but parts of the body where the life air is prominent. And they knew it. They weren't brahmanas, they're just village ladies, but they were cultured village ladies. And they knew all this procedure. So immediately, all attention is going to Krishna and warding off evil spirits. After brahmanas chanted Vedic hymns and performed auspicious ritualistic ceremony, she allowed him to suck her breast. So the rituals were for the purpose of removing bad influences. I mean, not like they're superstitious. The understanding of misfortune may come because of the influence of some bad elements. And to remove that influence of the bad elements, then counteraction methods. Because each of the principle of the counteracting method was names of the Supreme Lord Hari. So by saying Om and the name of the Supreme Lord, Aya Namaha, mantras like that, protecting this part of the body, protecting that part, just like we do. But when we apply tilak, the same principle. Same principle. So here's a comprehensive painting that shows the whole Leela in one painting. The cart falling apart. The receiving of Krishna. The cart falling apart is right in the center. And then all the other things are around the side. There's commentary by Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he describes the significance of each of the demons killed by Krishna. It's in two of his books. He wrote 100 books. In two of those 100 books, Chaitanya Shikshamrita and Krishna Samhita, he describes Krishna's childhood pastimes, the demons that Krishna killed in his childhood pastimes, the demons that Balaram killed in their childhood pastimes, and the significance of each of the pastimes. There's Krishna's helping the sadhaka, that's us, overcomes some obstacle on the path of bhakti. That's his analysis. And with the demon Putana, his description is, it's elsewhere also, but his description is the false teachings and false teachers, because Putana was presenting herself as if she was, mother, but she wasn't a mother. She was a wicked demoness wanting to kill Krishna. So Krishna protects one who's sincere from such obstacles, false teachers and false teachings. And here, another feature of a conditioned soul is load carrying. When things like a donkey or like a hardworking person, I have to work very hard because life is meant to work very hard. It's not the opposite, is you're meant to be lazy or indolent, but the mentality that progression in life is found through hard, intense endeavor. Sakatasura represents a load-carrying mentality arising out of old and new bad habits from this life and previous lives. He also represents lethargy, dullness, and false pride. Krishna removes this contamination by kicking it aside. So he carries on describing this further. Bad habits. Does anybody here have any bad habits? So Krishna knows what our bad habits are. And as we're engaged in sadhana bhakti, we discover more bad habits than we knew we had before. Because there's purification and things that just we take for granted. There's enough purification we can see them instead of just taking them for granted. Heavy utensils were piled up in the cart. It required so many stout cowherd men to put the cart together and pile up the utensils. But a mere touch of Krishna's lotus feet was enough to smash the cart to pieces and scatter all the utensils. Similarly, we have been carrying the burden of our bad habits for many lives. With our own effort, we cannot do anything. But by Krishna's mercy, our bad habits can be destroyed in a moment. I've been preparing for a seminar on Madhurya Kandambini. Madhurya Kandambini is a very nice short book written by Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, expanding on 2 verses from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that discuss the stages of bhakti. So he dives into it very thoroughly. And one of the important teachings is, how does bhakti arise? From whence does it arise? How does it come into somebody's life? And one of the teachings, he goes through different. One might consider this, that, the other thing. But bhakti arises, or bhakti appears in the heart of someone of its own sweet will. He makes reference to several verses in the Bhagavatam, where in Uddhava Gita, for example, Krishna says to Uddhava that it appears in Yadrichchaya. Yadrichchaya is a very interesting Sanskrit word. One of the ways to translate it is somehow or other. Ichcha means desire or will. And Yadrichchaya means it's just by the will of Bhakti herself, Bhakti Devi herself, she appears. And there's no material prompt. that causes it. It's a very interesting topic. I like the topic, so I'll discuss it a little bit because it has something to do with other processes for spiritual elevation require our own effort. Gyan requires effort. Karma yoga requires effort. It's not that bhakti we just be complacent, but the appearance of bhakti happens by just good fortune that doesn't have a prompt. Like, he analyzes. Some say, and it's a common conception about religion or theism, that persons that are very pious and more pious and more pious, they're more eligible for religious life or spiritual life. And he reasons, if that were so, then it would mean that there's a material cause, but Scripture says there's no material cause. Because if this is a precondition for bhakti to appear, that's a material cause. But it doesn't, because bhakti can appear in the life of those that are not necessarily pious, or lifetimes and lifetimes, or heaps and piles and mountains of pious activity. Bhakti can appear anywhere. And there's other reasoning and other reasoning. It boils down to this, the one point, very important point, is it's not something that we can do to make bhakti appear. We have to receive it, and then we can nurture it. And that's something we can do, is nurture. But how does it make its first appearance? And for that matter, how does it grow? It's different than the other processes of yoga or other recommended procedures in the Vedas for elevation. That requires you do something. You require austerity or cultivation of knowledge or detached work or cultivation. Your own effort can produce something. The message described in scriptures and very nicely covered by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is bhakti appears on its own and it grows on its own. It has own sweet will. That's Yadrishaya. Its own sweet will. No material causal principle. Or in the language of the Bhagavatam, ahaitokiya pratyata. Some of you know the verse. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojataha Janiyatu Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chaya Dhaitukam. Ahaitukam. There's no material, there's no hetu, there's no material cause. So how does it appear? It appears by one who's a madhyama, just skipping many steps, one who's a madhyama bhakta, one who's carrying bhakti, has the power of attorney, or is empowered by Krishna to distribute bhakti. So you have to have bhakti to distribute it. You have to have something to distribute that something. So one who has bhakti has some authority by Krishna's authority to give bhakti to others. It's a nice discussion. So similarly, the eradication of and the further maturing of bhakti, one of the further maturings of bhakti is when you engage in bhakti, something nice happens, that the unwanted things, anarthas, become eliminated. But anarthas don't become eliminated by us. Anarthas become eliminated by bhakti, the power of bhakti. Because the bhakti appears independently, and the power of bhakti is independent. Not dependent on us. Not dependent on something we do or don't do. There's practices of sadhana that help us become qualified to receive bhakti, but it's not we can make bhakti happen. With our own effort, we cannot do anything, but by Krishna's mercy, our bad habits can be destroyed in a moment. And by Krishna's mercy means the mercy of bhakti. Sakatasura represents dullness and laziness. This is a Back to Godhead magazine interview, or excuse me, illustration. Now, in Garga Samhita and in Brahma Vaivarta Purana, it gives a description of those two references of the past life of Sakatasura, according to those two scriptures. Sakatasura was Utkacha, Hiranyaksha's son. We don't hear too much about him, but it's described in those places. Once he went to Lomasha Rishi, or Lomasha Muni's hermitage, and broke some trees. That was a mistake. Seeing this, the Brahmana became angry and cursed him. Oh, evil-hearted one, become bodiless. From this deed, his body at once fell away, as a snake's old skin also falls away. The king of demons, that's Hiranyaksha's son, then fell at the Brahmana's feet and spoke. Utkacha said, O sage, O ocean of mercy, please be kind to me. I did not know your power, O Lord. Please give me a body. The anger of saintly persons brings a blessing. The blessing was, you may have a body made of air. When the Chakshush Manvantar is over, and the Vaivasvata Manvantar has come, Lord Hari's foot will give you liberation. So his foot is the kicking of the cart demon. So he is in this no body except the body of air, which is like a subtle body, or like a ghost kind of a situation. And ghosts can inhabit others. Ghosts can inhabit objects. And that's what he did. Now, how he doesn't give indication how Kamsa sent him, but somehow Kamsa sent him. Dispatched by Kamsa, he came to do his business. And there's this little mantra, Om Shakatasura Bhajanaya Namaha, or he broke the cart. Now the other half of this chapter 7, we just went through 50 slides. The other half of this chapter is that the scene is in Gokula. Gokula means on the eastern side of the river Yamuna. The history was that the ancestral home of Nanda and the ancestral home of Vrishabhanu were on the western side of the river Yamuna. And both of them, they were friends, and both of them wished to have a child, and there's no children for some number of years. And so together they considered, maybe a greater auspiciousness will come if we shift from the western side in our ancestral home region to the eastern side. Is a very auspicious, simple place. And so they agreed and they moved. Their whole family, the whole paraphernalia, everything, they shifted. Now here they are on the eastern side of the river Yamuna, and 2 children were born. The place where Radharani was born is a very nice place. And when you visit Vrindavan, you go on a pilgrimage, you probably go to that place. It's a nice place. Very simple place. Very, very simple place. And only shortly before she was born, Krishna was born. No, she was born. Krishna was born, yes. Then she was born. So that 3 months after came the Putana demon, and it was a big, big scene. Putana's body was 12 miles long when she got killed by Krishna. And then they had to dispose of the dead body and all of that whole history. And they wanted, what was the cause of this? They couldn't understand. So something inauspicious, removal of the influences of inauspiciousness. And same with the Sakatasura, shortly thereafter. So they started to wonder, maybe this isn't a good place for our children. Maybe we should go back to the other side of the river Jamuna now that we have children. So after some time they went, when Krishna was 5 years old. But, several demons came, so it became, too much trouble. Let's go back. So you can only imagine, these aren't primitive people, they're village people, they're Vaishyas, but they're highly cultured, highly civilized, highly learned in the ways of Vedic culture. And yet there's all this misfortune happening. Now the misfortune from their perspective, because for example, when the cart broke, it made a big noise. It's a big, heavy cart. The cart was heavy enough to carry a big load of metal utensils. I don't know if you've seen those kinds of carts, but the carts are really heavy, and they can carry a big, heavy load. And the heaviness, little baby, and he kicked the cart upside down. So they're very concerned. Parents would naturally be concerned about something like this. The very same chapter, which means around the same age, then here comes a whirlwind demon. And Krishna knew that he was coming. So what did Krishna do? He just made himself so heavy, Mother Jasoda couldn't bear him on her lap anymore. She placed him on the ground. The purpose of Krishna becoming very heavy like that was he didn't want Mother Jasoda to have any difficulty with the whirlwind demon. He was going to deal with the whirlwind demon himself. So she put him down. And then she went about her other duties, as mothers may do sometimes. And then Krishna dealt with Trinavarta. And Trinavarta saw his victim and tried to carry him away, and worked the opposite. And then when he came crashing down from the sky, made a huge sound, this big body. How are the parents going to feel about all this? Something's not right. So everything's perfectly right, but the parental affection reads something's not right. And it's natural to think like that, anticipate in that way. I just like the the layer that Bhaktivinoda Thakur adds of the message. And in Krishna's Leela, there's multiple things going on. One of the main things that's going on is Krishna's reciprocating with the love of his devotees. Because when Krishna's in danger, what happens to the parent of Krishna? Their affection spikes. The protective tendency of parental affection spikes. So it's an intensification of love. And it's a very important part of the teaching of Rupa Goswami to understand the science of rasa. So obstacles or separation or danger or all those kinds of things, in material life it's one, and in spiritual life it's another. It's in spiritual life in relation to Krishna, just like the cart. The explanation right in the Bhagavatam, when Garga Samhita, a chariot descended when he died, and it carried him to the spiritual world, to Goloka Vrindavan. So Krishna's he's relieving the earth of demoniac kings and demoniac persons. Vinashaya Chaduskritam. He's reciprocating with the natural love that the residents, eternal associates of Krishna and residents of Vrindavan have. He's liberating the demons from the bondage of their past sinful activities. And he's providing material for us to read so many long duration of time later, years and years and years later, in such a way that hearing the narration has the same spiritual potency as the pastime itself. We can't see, we're not in Vrindavan when Krishna's made his appearance in Vrindavan and see and experience. We're not Brijvasis. There's time and space and qualifications separating us. But nonetheless, just like this description that bhakti appears on its own, of its own will, with no material prompt. So, as the commentary says at the very beginning, just by hearing these pastimes, love for Krishna is revived. Prema, in its fullest manner, can be restored, especially the childhood pastimes of Krishna have that kind of capacity or potency. So it's simple pastime, but a very, very powerful spiritual benefit for one narrating and one hearing. So that's what we're doing. Let's see if there's some discussion or comments on the passage. Mm-hmm.
Sakatasura is representing the lethargy and all that qualities, bad habits. Is Putna is also representing something?
Yes. False teachings and false teachers. They give false teachings. Because one who's, for the sadhaka, there's a beginning, and one of the obstacles for the sadhaka is encountering false teachers, false teachings. So Krishna protects the sadhaka. Of course, one has to be sincere, but one who's sincere wants Krishna's protection and Krishna gives his protection. So that's the significance. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation.
I do not know like how we can know like if it
Right teachings?
yeah, I mean sometimes we feel like it's true, but it might be false. So like
Okay, good point. Good point. Our standard is Guru Sadhu Shastra. And between the three is Shastra. So supposing one isn't so knowledgeable in Shastra, and here comes a teacher saying, this is what it says in Shastra, but it's not what it says in Shastra, and we're not discerning. It may sound, nice, but your question is, how are we to know that the standard is there alignment with what Scripture actually says? A very practical example, from maybe for many of us, certainly for me, was translations of Bhagavad Gita that are not the proper teaching.
but like the translation, we feel like it's from Shastra. The slokas and everything are from Shastra. The interpretation, like every people, I mean, it's changed, right? Person to person.
So your question is, how are we supposed to know? Because we don't know the Shastra, and here comes person X and person Y and person Z that says this is what Shastra says, and we don't know the Shastra, so we can be deceived. And people, it happens, doesn't it? Or, so then it requires, the principle of sincere inquiry. It's not just blind following, but it's verification of what's in the Scripture. What the teacher is saying according to what's in the Scripture. I mean, here's an example. Like Prabhupada speaks, it's at Bhagavad Gita as it is. Some interpreters of Bhagavad Gita say that, Kurukshetra means the senses. And then there's the body and the senses, and it's all a metaphor. There's no really such. I mean, as Gandhi said, there's no such thing as a battle of Kurukshetra. Although the book is the Battle of Kurukshetra. It's a metaphor. This means this, and that means that, and the other thing means the other thing. So supposing runs into that, that's not what Shastra says. You read the text, and that's not what the text says. And then it becomes this nice teaching that I've mentioned already, that the proper teaching comes through disciplic succession. And if there's disciplic succession, then there's consistency from one generation to the prior generation to the prior generation, speaking stereophonic, the same message, although the language, because of time and circumstance, might be slightly different. The principle is the same. And so there's an alignment with amongst one teacher, the next teacher. So that's one of the ways. How do you discern? The person is coming in disciplic succession, and the teaching that they're giving matches the teaching of the previous the acharyas in disciplic succession. So then it requires, a little bit of learning, as opposed to blind acceptance, or it's blind rejection. I don't know, and so I can't accept. Because I have to know before I can accept. So we begin with something. It's good fortune. You had the same Sanskrit, yadrishchaya. Where does that good fortune descend? Good fortune descends when one has some preliminary faith. This is the teaching of Rupa Goswami. the preliminary faith. It's just it's assumed within your question, but the preliminary faith is there is a higher reality, and I want to know what it is, and I know that I don't know what it is, but I want to know what it is. So that's the preliminary faith, and Krishna then seeing that faith, he'll send sadhu. Now, supposing one doesn't have such strong faith, one can get, bozo instead of sadhu, or cheater instead of, a putana instead of something genuine. But when someone, I ran across some disgenuine teachers before I came in contact with Prabhupada, and they were high sounding, but when I listened very carefully to what they were saying, I couldn't accept it. I'll give an example. This is just me personal, but um, when I was in college, there was a Harvard professor named Richard Alpert who left the university, went to India in search for spirituality. And he came back with an initiated name, Baba Ram Das, and he was chanting Hare Krishna and going around doing the college circuit. So I heard him because I was, seeking. And he was chanting Hare Krishna, and it was nice. I mean, I didn't know exactly what it was, but, and as he was speaking about chanting, after chanting, his teaching was become one with the chant. And I thought, that sounds cool. What does it mean? I didn't just but what does it mean? So I attended some more sessions and I found out that he is saying, he was explicit. In the beginning, there's you and the chant. But when you become very accomplished at chanting, it's just the chant. And then I knew what he was saying. Saying, you're God. That's what he was saying. I mean, implicitly, and then it's explicit because that was his teaching. The teaching was to do this to realize your divinity, the oneness with the Supreme. You are God. And, Swami Vivekananda came 100 years before that, saying the same thing. Why are you searching? The World Religion Conference in Chicago, you know about this. And his teaching was, why are you searching for God? You're all God. Well, sorry. Poor God? It's me? That was my response. So, I'm sorry, I'm not going to listen to this fellow. This false teaching. And then came Prabhupada chanting Hare Krishna, and you're the servant, you're eternal servant of God. He's the eternal master, you're the eternal servant. You've forgotten him and your relationship of eternal service. And this is to reawaken that mood of eternal service. I mean, it in principle, it resonated. And then reading Bhagavad Gita, it's what Bhagavad Gita says. So you're back to your question. How do you discern false teachers from real ones? There's some effort needed on our part, but also Super Soul can guide you. A little prompt that says, I'm sorry, but I'm not God. Nice try. And he was this professor, a scholarly, gifted with words kind of a person, charismatic like anything. But sorry, false teaching.
So, like what I understand, like at some point, if you have previous karma, like desire, like if
Be,
you desire it like from your heart, then
yeah.
Krishna helps you
Yes.
to.
Yeah. So be careful. Don't mix karma with bhakti.
Oh,
That meant by that it means one may be impious and one can be a receptacle for bhakti. It's not only pious people with good karma can then be a receptacle for bhakti. It's helpful, but it doesn't create bhakti. It may create a more favorable atmosphere to receive it, but it doesn't create it. Not a precondition. Bhakti doesn't arise from good karma. Bhakti arises of its own sweet will. It's an important principle, and it's how it grows. Also, anything else? Yes.
The connection to that question at the last
Following her question.
her question.
Okay.
Uh, so, what are the roles of the receiver of the bhakti that one can receive it easily?
Are you saying roles or rules?
Roles,
Roles.
like what one can do to receive it easily.
Well, Brahmajigyasu, inquisitive. I want to know. So if there's an eagerness to know, you have a good receiver. Then you have to have a good broadcaster. You know, like that. Here's a signal, but you're not on the signal because you're distracted. But if you adjust the position of the receiver, then the signal comes clear. And it's a little bit like, distraction. For example, when in the practice of bhakti, supposing you're sitting reading Bhagavad Gita, or supposing you're sitting having kirtan or chanting japa, and you're distracted, your mind is all over the place. That's not the good receiver. So wanting to know, and then control of the mind and senses helps the receiver to receive. So then what should I do to control the mind and senses? Then comes, the do nots, the regular principles, because those regular principles serve to cause blockages for receiving that signal or the message. It's basic. There's further and further, but there's, minimally these four basic principles. And it's right in Bhagavad Gita that this teaching is not to be given to people who are sinful, because they can't understand it. They'll misuse it. So that's it. On the receiver side, control of the senses, and then control of the mind. So that mind, on the practice side, the mind is controlled by intelligence. Indriyani pranyahur, the senses are superior to dull matter. The mind is superior to the senses. The intelligence is superior to the mind. So it takes intelligence to control the mind. And intelligence that controls the mind means, with my intelligence, I want to follow the path of purity. And that tells my mind, don't go into those dark places and stay in the light places. And by practice, you stay in the light and away from the darkness. So control, that's it, in response to your question. What can help us in the receptivity department? Control of the mind and senses. Following the regular principles, for starters, that's the senses. And study the scripture, because that strengthens the intelligence. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. And it's true. You associate with intelligence. You then have a chance to become more intelligent. That's scripture. Read Bhagavad Gita regularly. The intelligence can grow and become stronger, and that will help. It's not the end of the whole process, but it's an essential element, strengthening the intelligence to control the mind. And voluntary acceptance of some inconvenience, like Ekadasis. It's pretty simple. No beans and grains. No big deal. Twice a month. Fantastic. But it takes, why? Because it's an auspicious day, and that takes some faith in the Vedic statement that it's an auspicious day, but it's an auspicious day, and one observes it, and one gets some strength of intelligence, this acceptance of the conclusions of the Vedas. Supposing I'm not going to do that because I don't know if it's true or not. So I'm not going to do it until I know it's true. That's not strong intelligence. Not faithful either. So that helps the receptivity. Yeah. When we went to Haridwar, I learned a lot that I didn't know before going to Haridwar. It's a place where many people would go. I mean, there's many, 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 many persons that they went there for purification. So how do they know to go there? From scripture. And when they went there, they got purification. I mean, I had read it, but it didn't register. That's the place where Dhritarashtra went after he was scolded by his younger brother. Younger brothers usually don't scold older brothers, but he needed it. And so he gave it to him. And he went to Haridwar and underwent mystic yoga. I mean, he was actually a qualified person, but he had been contaminated by his material desire. Anyway, many, many incidents like that. That Haridwar is a place, so it's a place of purification, taking bath in the Ganges. And in Haridwar, every morning at 6 a.m., they have Mangal Arati for Mother Ganges, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's purification. And so it takes faith to do those things. It's a holy place and go and take bath. So that's not just piety, back to your question. It's not piety, it's spiritual elevation. So who's eligible for spiritual elevation? One who receives it. Because bhakti moves of her own sweet will. And that you just say yes. So that's the receiver part. Something else? Yes.
Like we strongly have this idea of purification that when some difficulty comes, we generally talk among devotees that Krishna is bringing some purification. So I also wanted to understand that, like when we go to some holy place.
When we go to some
holy place,
holy place.
and from that, some purification comes, and the purification orchestrated by Krishna in our lives through some, let's say, difficulties or something.
Well, it's not just difficulties, but go ahead.
Yeah, happy moments as well. So,
Sure.
So, what is the difference between these two? And also, I had a comment.
Wait. What's the difference between which two? Difficulties and going somewhere to get some good fortune. Yeah. What's the difference between the two? Well, there's many answers to that question. We're living in a world of duality. it's 45 degrees, whereas there it's 95 degrees. Or, wait a while, it's going to get colder than. So there's day and night, and hot and cold, and pleasure, pain, and happy, distress, and it's a place of duality. Just by design, it's a place of duality. So when there's distress or some inconvenience or something, some hardship, some misfortune, it's not necessarily that it's by design purification, like Krishna's spanking us because we were bad, and that's purification because we've been bad. It's just the nature of the place. Now, how you perceive the circumstance, that's different for different individuals and as well as different circumstances. So, in the broader sense, purification is just acknowledging this is Dukalayama Shashvatam. By nature, this place is temporary, ashashvatam, and it's full of distress. But that's the place. Prison houses are not nice. And this is the prison house. This is Durga is the prison warden, and the prison is Durga. Two different words. And here we are. And why are we here? It's not just we're just being here. Even that the allure of happiness is a misfortune, because that keeps us plodding along with our fruitive activities to try to become enjoyers. And then it's not to the distress itself is the purification, just being here. So it depends. Then it depends on how you choose to address yourself to what your life mission is. Is my life mission to try to make the happy times more and the unhappy times less? And I can do that, I'm successful. So back to your question. When hardship comes, it's not just purification. It's just purification. It depends on your consciousness behind your experience, whether it's purification or not. And similarly, good fortune. So some good fortune comes. So having the food that we eat, it's a kindness of Krishna. And so how do we acknowledge the kindness? It's just everyday stuff. But one can be acknowledging the kindness of Krishna, and that's purification. And failing to acknowledge the kindness of Krishna, that's contamination. It's involving explicitly in the words of Bhagavad Gita, we're implicating ourselves in sin. The same act of eating, which is necessary to live. So it's not just difficulty, it's purification. It's the consciousness behind your experience of what's coming your way in this world of duality. And then the other, going to a holy place or doing something, besides going to a holy dham, just a simple one, observing Mangalarti or observing Ekadasi or coming up as Damodar month for a whole month. It's an opportunity, just like Ekadasi is an opportunity. So Damodar month, and the observance, there's the ritual, but if someone can do the ritual, and there's benefit for the whole month. Special for that month. But beyond just the ritual of offering a lamp and saying something, It's honoring the personality of Godhead, who shows his mercy to Mother Yashoda in that way. He's bound by the love of Mother Yasoda, not by the rope of Mother Yashoda. And meditating on that, so that's, you go out of you, that's bhakti. The means of purification, whether it's the holy place or becoming, worshiping the deity or coming before the deity, and etc., etc. Then it can be, it can be ritualized and routinized, or it can be very devotional, or somewhere in between. So then it's the consciousness behind the activity, not just the activity itself. So there's a similarity, and the dissimilarity is making choices to experience, to bring into one's consciousness the power of bhakti. Anything else? Krishna. Yeah.
This point was very, very profound. When impressions are removed, we can taste the rasa. We have like so many impressions, but when we hear the Krishna Katha,
Yeah. When I read it, I was thinking, because I've been so immersed in Madhurya Kandambini, the very first chapter of Madhurya Kandambini is the description of Krishna as rasa from Taittiriya Upanishad. Raso vai saha. Vai, certainly. Saha, pronoun, he or it, is rasa. That's Krishna is rasa. And Krishna appears in the consciousness through the medium of bhakti. And when Krishna appears through the medium of bhakti, then these two things happen. There's purification and there's awakening of rasa. Or, rasa raj, Krishna touches the consciousness of the soul, and one can experience rasa, but one won't experience rasa if the coverings are too thick. So it's the same thing. It's just another way of saying the same thing. It's just, the context of what we just did, hearing one part of one chapter from 10th Canto Bhagavatam, Krishna's childhood pastimes, has the power to cleanse. And when that cleansing takes place, because Krishna is rasa, then one can taste rasa. And otherwise, it's just a nice story. But it's purifying, not just a nice story. There's lots of nice stories, materially speaking, but not with the same potency as the story of Krishna's pastimes, or the history of Krishna's pastimes. So yes, it's a powerful statement. And it has everything to do with bhakti being bestowed through rasaraj, and how that comes into our life, and how that has the capacity to cleanse and has the capacity to restore the original taste of loving exchange with Krishna. But that's rasa. That's what rasa is. Now, in my, could you get from the car, that's the little roller bag that has ribbons on it? Because inside that's some Mahaprasadam from Vrindavan. Huh? Well, somebody was very kind. They brought 3 boxes of Vrindavan Mahaprasadam, and 2 of them are gone. Which one? Yeah, you have something?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hold, speak into the
Yeah,
microphone.
one of the slide, a very beginning, where Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami mentioning that Yashodama is very affectionate to Krishna, is only the son.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand why that statement is mentioned that Krishna is the only son.
Of Yashoda, she
Yeah.
had only one son. There was the secondary person, but it wasn't her son. That was Balaram. So Yashoda, had a friend, Rohini. And Rohini was the son of, Rohini's son was Balaram. But because they were so close, and because Rohini had no husband with her, Vasudeva was her husband, but Vasudeva sent her to be with Nanda because of Kamsa. So Nanda accepted Balaram like his son. And Yashoda accepted Balaram like her son. But not her biological son, but just the affection like a mother to her son. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to get the Mahaprasadam out.